If you have a big purchase coming up, you may be asking whether you should finance or pay cash. But even if you do have the cash to spend, it may not be the best idea in the long term. Joining us this morning with more is Peter Cishecki from Everything Financial. Good morning, Peter. Good to see you.
Good morning, Carrie. Nice to see you.
I'm really curious to know, how many people that you come across actually have the cash to pay for a big expenditure. But first of all, what should we consider when looking at whether to finance something or to pay cash?
Yeah, the rate of the financing for sure, but a lot of people in the retired market and from that generation see not paying cash, they see that as debt. And just because you have a loan on something doesn't actually mean it's debt.
How do you clarify that? Because I think people do have a hard time wrapping their head around that.
They do. It's your net worth statement. So we ran an example. Let's say you're buying a car for $50,000, but if you have the cash to pay for the car, then your net worth statement is still the same. You have the car of a debt, if you will. It's a finance of $50,000, but you also have the cash of $50,000. So your net worth statement is still the same because you have the cash to pay off the car if life changed or you needed to. But the question is, should you pay off the car?
Okay, so here comes the next question, the pros and cons. I mean, I would think that if you do finance something, there's the interest that you pay. I mean, that could be a con, right?
Yeah, let's say the interest is, let's say, in the example we ran, we checked with a couple of car manufacturers, is averaging around 4.9%. It's a little higher than it was, obviously, a year ago. But if your investment's earning 4.9 or 5%, because that's the number we kind of always use, if you average 5% over the next 5 years on your investment, and the interest is, let's just say it's the same, 5%, you're going to have money left over from that $50,000 cash at the end of 5, 6, 7 years, depending how long you finance the car. And you're going to have a substantial amount of money left over. But if you just drop $50,000 on the car, and let's say you are retired, how are you going to go earn that $50,000 back to put it in your base, in your slush fund? You're not going to be able to earn it back. So paying cash is not always the best way. Paying cash is a lot of times a good way to get broke real quick.
I think a lot of people have their hard time wrapping their head around that because we've always been told, when it comes to debt, like pay off those high interest rate things to avoid being in debt. So what other things should we be considering here? Is there a situation where we should be using cash instead of financing?
And that's the key. You just said it, Carrie. You served it up for me. Way to go. It's high interest. If you're getting that, and we always talk about that, the credit cards are a different story, and the high interest debts like that, but they're not a big money purchase though. They're just bad debt. But paying cash for a big purchase that appreciates in value is not always a bad thing. You're investing money and it's going to grow, right? But if you're putting money into a car, well, the car doesn't appreciate. The car depreciates. And the best example, you don't have to look any further than people who win a lottery or professional athletes who get the big money contract. A lot of them don't do proper financing. And I know many stories, and they end up broke because they think that cash will never end, and they start spending cash, and before you know it, their purchasing power is gone. And that's the advantage of financing at a reasonable rate. And that's the key, Carrie, is you've got to look at the numbers. But a reasonable rate, and I ran a few scenarios, even 6 and 7% on the car with a 5% investment is still not a bad thing to do. You'll end up in a pretty good situation at the end, and that's what you got to look at: getting your money working for you and not eroding your base. You start eroding the base of money, you're going to be in for a world of hurt down the road.
Okay, well, you've certainly opened your eyes to a lot of scenarios that could play out. Peter Cishecki with Everything Financial. Thanks for joining us, Peter. Have a great day. See you back next week.
Thanks, Carrie, and now you can go shop for a car.